So before we start solving the problems in this section, we need to look at our 5 steps for problem solving. Step 1. We're going to pick x as the variable we use to represent one of the quantities that we're supposed to find. So sometimes we'll be finding more than one quantity, but we're going to start with step 1 and we're going to let x be one of those quantities. Step 2. If we have to find 2 quantities, we use x to represent the other quantities, but we do it in terms of x. And so you'll see what I mean when we get to example 2 for that step. Step 3, we're going to write an equation in terms of x. 4 is to solve the equation, and then make sure you're answering the question in a complete sentence, and then we always check the solution to make sure that it works. Alright, so let's look at this first one. Now, this is a basic one. You could probably solve this without actually writing an equation. You could probably just do some backwards math to get to the original answer. But we're going to start with this one to write our equation so we kind of get the hang of how this goes. So a car rental agency charges $100 a week plus 25 cents per mile to rent a car. How many miles can you travel in 1 week for $395? So step 1 is to let x represent one of the quantities. So you always want to go back, read, it's usually found in the last sentence, read the last sentence of the problem again to figure out what it is you're supposed to find. We're supposed to find how many miles. So my step 1 means I'm going to let x equal the number of miles. So this is what I mean by let x represent one of the quantities. This is also called defining your variables. So before you even figure out what number x represents, you have to figure out what quantity it represents. Alright, in this case, step 2, there's really no need for step 2 here because we're only supposed to find the amount of miles. So we don't really need to do anything for step 2 here because there's not 2 quantities. Alright, step 3 says write an equation in terms of x to describe the situation. So let's just kind of go through and talk about it in words. So if you want to figure out your total cost at the end of a week, what you're going to do is you're going to take that original $180 that you had to pay, plus you're going to add the 25 cents that you spent for each mile. So you're going to take the amount of miles that you drove, multiply it by 25 cents, add it on to that original fee or that initiation fee or registration fee, whatever you want to call it, add it to the 180, and then that's going to give you your weekly cost. So now let's fill in what we know. We know the weekly cost was $395, and we got that by taking the $180 flat fee or the upfront fee plus 25 cents for each mile, so 0.25x, because x represents the miles. Step 4 is to solve that equation. So I am going to subtract 180 from both sides. So 395 minus 180 gives me 215 equals 0.25x. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 0.25, and I should get 860. So I've solved for x, but I'm not done. I have to answer the question still. So what I'm going to say is that you can drive, let's write our answer over here, you can drive 860 miles in 1 week for a total cost of $395. So that's what we mean by answer the question. Okay, I don't just stop right here at x equals 860. Alright, now step 5, of course, we always want to check. So check the solution in the original wording. So let's say you paid your $180 flat fee plus you paid 25 cents per mile. Well, now we know 860 is what we're plugging in. So we want to work that out. So 0.25 times 860, that's the 215, and then 180 plus 215 gets us to the 395. So we know it checks out. All right, let's look at number 2. A basketball court is a rectangle with a perimeter of 86 meters. The length is 13 meters more than the width. Find the width and the length. So this is an example where we're going to have two quantities to find. Okay, so step 1, it was to let x represent one of the quantities. All right, now let's go back and look and decide which one we should choose. Should we choose the width or the length? Because we want to make an educated decision here. We don't just want to randomly choose one. Notice how the length is given in terms of the width. The length is 13 meters more than the width. So that means if you knew the width, all you would have to do is add 13 to get your length. So we're going to start by letting x equal the width. Because if I know that, then I can figure out the length. So step 2 says represent other quantities in terms of x. So if the width is x, then 13 more than that, which would be x plus 13, equals the length. Alright, step 3 is to write the equation. Now before we can do that, we need to know the equation for the perimeter, because we're talking about perimeter here. So the equation for the perimeter of a rectangle is 2 of the lengths plus 2 of the widths. And so now we're going to substitute in everything that we know. We know the perimeter is 86. 2 times L is going to be 2 times the quantity x plus 13. And then 2 times the width, we're going to replace the width with just plain old x. Now we have one variable. So now, step 4 is going to be to solve this. I'm going to get 2x plus 26 plus 2 more x. Combine like terms. 2x and 2x gives me 4x plus 26. Subtract 26 from both sides. 86 minus 26 gives me 60. And then last step is to divide by 4. So here I'm getting an x value of 15. Now remember, that's just the width. We need to find the width and the length. So if x is 15, that means the width is 15. So we're going to say the width is 15 meters. Now the length, in this case, is going to be 28 meters. Now, why is it 28? Where am I getting the 28? Well, go back right here. The length is whatever the width is plus 13. So 15 plus 13, there's my 28. Okay? And then step 5, let's make sure it makes sense. So perimeter is 2 of the length. Oops. Perimeter equals 2 of the length, so 2 of the 28s, plus 2 of the widths, so 2 of the 15s. So 2 times 28 is 56, 2 times 15 is 30, and there we go, there's our 86. So we know that it checks out. Alright, let's look at number 3.